Hello and welcome. I'm Fred Kempe. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. And thank you to this 12th edition of the Atlantic Council Front Page, our premier live ideas platform for global leaders. This one is with the Prime Minister of Singapore, His Excellency Lee Hsien Loong, in conversation with David Rubenstein, co-founder, co-executive chairman of the Carlyle Group, and a master interviewer in his own right. Mr. Prime Minister, during this extended global period of uncertainty in the area of COVID-19, we don't believe so much in social distance. We're socially very close over these Zoom lines and other platforms where we're speaking. It is physical distance, but we've brought the community, the Global Atlantic Council community, closer together than ever before, and most powerfully through these AC Front Page platforms. Over the past few months, we've been hearing from a diverse array of extraordinary leaders from impressive global, and we've had impressive global audiences. We've had the IMF Executive Director, the NATO Secretary General, heads of state and government from Colombia, Afghanistan, and many others. This program connects directly to the core mission of the Atlantic Council, which is to shape the future together with partners and allies. And there is no partner that is as crucial to a lot of our efforts as is Singapore. And we've worked at the Atlantic Council very effectively with your ambassador and your government for many years. So greetings also in the audience to Ambassador Mirpuri. This program is beamed around the world. We've had 300 events since we went to lockdown, reaching more than 700,000 people. Under Prime Minister Lee's 15-year leadership, Singapore has continued to be a crucial and valuable partner to the United States and Asia, while prospering economically as a champion of free trade and serving as an economic hub for the world. Singapore has made great efforts to be a leader in ASEAN, promoting regional collaboration on newly emerging challenges such as cybersecurity, and as the digital economy is fast becoming the next driver for growth within the region. It's also important to note that Singapore was the first to deliver PPE, personal protective equipment sets, test kits, and ventilators to its neighbors in the region, and has led ASEAN's collective response to the virus. I know this virus is still raging across the world, but I think Singapore's handling of this virus is one that many in the world are pointing to as a model for others. Along with the thousands who will be tuning into this special event, I also am looking forward to hearing from you, Prime Minister Lee, at this historic moment for your country, for U.S.-Singapore relations, and of course for the Indo-Pacific region. This event has been organized by the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center, which is run by Barry Pavel, and the Asia, and within that, the Asia Security Initiative led by Dr. Mian Oh, who will close this session after your interview. That initiative is dedicated to helping the United States better cooperate with allies and partners in a new era of strategic competition. I encourage all of you on the line to join the discussion by either using the Q&A function on Zoom or by tweeting your questions by using the hashtag AC Front Page. So either in the Q&A function in Zoom or hashtag AC Front Page. Now I'd like to turn to David Rubenstein. David, of course, has joined us previously on Atlantic Council Front Page. Indeed, he has been the subject of an interview where I was interviewing him, Mr. Prime Minister. We're honored to have him here again as the interviewer and the moderator. He's what you would call a Renaissance man. He's a pioneer, as we all know, in the field of private equity, but he's also a legendary philanthropist, an avid observer of our times, a real student of history who has authored the book, The American Story, Conversations with Master Historians. I can't wait to hear what the two of you have to say to each other. So let me turn it over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Fred, and thank you for the outstanding job you've been doing as the president of the Atlantic Council for a number of years. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this conversation. Mr. Prime Minister, let me first congratulate you on your election. You had an election last week, and you won 83 of the 93 seats. In our country, that would be considered a landslide. Were you happy with the results?
We were satisfied with the results. We had hoped for higher popular vote, but in the circumstances, we think it's a clear mandate. And we will make the most of it and serve Singapore as best we can in the next 5 years.
So you think you were aided by the fact you were going to do this interview? This interview made you more popular in Singapore than otherwise? The fact that you were going to do this interview, is that what you think helped you?
I would like to think so.
So right now, as you now are serving, as Fred mentioned, you're in your 16th year as Prime Minister. Your father served for 31 years. I assume you're not going to try to beat that record, right?
No, that is not my ambition.
But have you decided how long you would like to stay as Prime Minister? Before the election, you had said you might step down at some point before another election. Is your current position that you might stay through the entire term, or you haven't decided yet?
I haven't decided. I had hoped to be able to hand over by the time I was 70 years old, which is February 2022. But COVID-19 has taken us all by surprise, and I think I have to see this through and hand over Singapore in good shape into good hands.
Okay, well, let's talk about COVID. As Fred mentioned, Singapore initially was considered to be a marvel because you had virtually no COVID cases. And then in recent months, there have been more COVID cases, I think, from a lot of your foreign workers. Is that fair? And how do you have it under control now?
It's under control now. We had it under control for some time, and then we had an outbreak in our migrant worker dormitories, which are communal living. So it's like being on an aircraft carrier or a cruise ship or in a nursing home, and it spreads very fast. So suddenly we had a very big problem in our hands. But we've managed to bring that under control systematically. We have been clearing the dorms one by one. The task is almost complete. We should be done with it within a couple of weeks' time. But of course, then comes the challenge of keeping the people continuing safe and clean and allowing them to go back to work without once again starting a cycle of infection. And that's a big challenge which is occupying us now. But in the rest of our community, the numbers are down. And fortunately for us, also the mortality rates have been very low. We've had 29 deaths out of altogether 50,000 cases in Singapore, thereabouts.
So today, are you reopening your economy? Did you shut your economy down a bit for a while and have people work remotely at home?
Yes, we did. We were shut down for 2 months. We called it a circuit breaker. People work from home. Many businesses had to close, especially those which cannot work from home, like entertainment places. But we've been opening up since the beginning of June. So far, so good. Cases have remained low, and we are not completely open yet, but we are progressively getting there. The manufacturing is practically normal. Construction is more complicated because their workers were in the dorms and were the sick ones. And then we have the tourist and travel related sectors, Singapore Airlines, hotels, some of the entertainment outlets. Those I think are going to be affected for quite some time yet.
So how did you manage the government when the country was going to shut down? Were you working remotely yourself and from your home, or how did your ministers work in terms of running the government at that time?
We sometimes go into the office, but we had safe distancing measures. So for example, when the cabinet meets, we don't all meet in the same room. We've divided into team A and team B, and half of us are in one room and half of us are in another room. And it happens all the way down in the rest of the government and in many of the private companies as well. I think we have to take these precautions seriously because you never know when you are going to be exposed to it. And I don't want my whole cabinet to be quarantined at the same time.
So is wearing a mask a political kind of thing in Singapore? Does everybody wear masks and there's no real controversy about wearing masks there?
Yes, we've made it a requirement. At first, we discouraged people because we thought that the science did not suggest that it was necessary, and we thought that this would alarm people. But as the science became clearer, we had to change our position, and now it is a requirement to wear masks when you go outdoors. And everybody does so. In fact, if you don't, somebody will tell you that.
And you also have a fairly unique contact tracing system. You might describe how that works and whether you think it's been as successful as you would like.
Most of the contact tracing is not extraordinary. It's what everybody else does. You interview the person, you find out where he's been, you go and trace those places and then follow the chain like a detective. But we've also developed an app which we've encouraged people to load onto their phones, and it will track other people's who have the app who have been close to you for some period through Bluetooth. And if you get sick, then we ask you to give us the information from within your app, and we will hope to use that to find some of the contacts which you might otherwise not have been aware of or might have forgotten. And it's not easy to get to work, but we found that it's of some help, and every time we have a sick person, you get 1-2 contacts via the app this way. And we're developing a little pod, which will be more convenient to carry around because the app on the phone drains the battery and people object.
So Singapore is a country that many people may not actually have visited who are watching today or listening. I've started going there in 1970, and I think I've gone at least once every year since then. So I'm reasonably familiar with Singapore, but for those who are not, can you tell us when the country officially became an independent country, your population and your ethnicity makeup?
We became independent in 1965. Before that, we declared ourselves independent, but we joined the Federation of Malaysia, which is Malaysia today. And within 2 years, we found that it didn't work, and we were sent out into the wild on our own to fend for ourselves. That's 1965, 55 years ago. Since then, we've thrived. We now have 5.7 million people thereabouts altogether, of which citizens are about 3.5 million. About 70% are Chinese, about 15% are Malays. We have about 9% Indians, and a small proportion of other minorities amongst the citizen population.
So Singapore has been considered for generations an economic miracle, a very small country, relatively speaking, but relatively prosperous. What is it the secret to Singapore's success financially and economically, in your view?
I think hard work and paranoia. We have no resources. We know we have to work hard, and we are small. We can see the world at our doorstep and all the threats in the wide and dangerous world around us. And so we put our minds to it, and we have been able to work together. And fortunately, with good leadership and with a united people, we've made steady progress. And we've kept on going in the same direction for a long time.
Now, if somebody is listening to you and they say, well, Singapore sounds like a place I should visit, I haven't been there, can somebody come to Singapore now, or because of COVID, it's really difficult to go visit Singapore now?
It's a little bit harder now, but in normal times, it's very easy, and we are trying our best to get the lines opened up again in a safe way so that you can come and visit us once again and see what Singapore really is like.
So one of the issues that your father and you have dealt with is trying to keep a balance between China and the United States, which is a very complicated thing because you're not trying to align yourself with either China or the United States, but be friendly with both. So
Yes.
What is your current take on the U.S.-China relationship? Do you think it's devolved into an unfortunate situation, or are you optimistic it can turn around?
I think it's a very unfortunate situation. Actions have been taken which have provoked counter-actions, and the issues have metastasized and spread into all fields of the relationship. It's normal between two powers that you will have areas where you have contradictions and areas where you can work together. But I think the way things have developed over the last several years, you have very many areas where there's not only contradiction, but also deep distrust. And this is corrosive, and it's making a very difficult relationship very dangerous. Because if it goes wrong, it's not just any bilateral relationship, it's the most important bilateral relationship in the world between a very powerful United States of America and between a country with 1/4 of humanity. And I don't think that is a collision which should be lightly ventured.
Now, are you worried that the United States might pull out of being an Asian power and not be as present there as it has been historically, or is that not a concern of yours?
Well, we worry about two things. One, that you may collide with the Chinese and in Asia too. And on the other hand, that you may decide that you have no stake in the region and leave us to our own defenses. And we all have good relations with China. We all want good relations with China in Asia, but we also all have very deep relations with the United States and want to keep them at the same time. And maintaining that balance, and for the US to be able to play that role and tend your many interests and your many friends and your many investments in the region, I think that requires a significant amount of attention from the United States policy establishment, from the State Department, and from the White House too. Because otherwise, a part of the world which has been crucial to you since the Second World War, I think may become a problem rather than an asset to you.
Now, in the United States, we are in a political campaign. Your political campaign was only, I think, 9 days. How do you have a campaign that's only 9 days?
Well, we are just one city smaller than New York.
So only 9 days, and is there any limit to how much one can spend in a campaign? Here we seem to have
there's a limit. You're allowed to spend about $5 a voter or thereabouts, and mostly we spend less. We don't encourage political advertisements. We provide free airtime on television, and it's cheap to reach out to voters because we are a compact place.
One thing that has always been unique about Singapore is it pays its government officials kind of private sector compensation. In other words, in the United States, we pay very low salaries for government officials. What is the system that you have, and are you convinced it's the best system to use for Singapore?
Well, I think it works for us. It's not uncontroversial, but we believe that it's best that we pay the person according to what he is worth and according to what he is contributing. Because if you don't do that, either you will compromise on the quality of your civil service, or people will find ways to make up and compensate, camouflage forms of compensation, or you'll have a revolving door and then you have something when you go out after you retire. And I think those lead to other kinds of big problems. So we believe it's better for us to be open about this and to be honest about this very difficult problem, but to make sure that our public officers are paid competitively, not leading the private sector, but competitively. And if you enter the political leadership, then you are paid a clear discount, a significant discount compared to the private sector, but not such a huge discount that it becomes unwearable.
So your neighbor, Malaysia, has had some corruption issues recently in the newspapers today because of a conviction, I guess, yesterday. There's been no corruption of any type in government officials in Singapore. Is that because you pay your officials a very high compensation relative to what they do elsewhere? Or
well, it's not the only factor, but it's one of the factors which makes it easier for us to deal with this problem. But we still have this problem, and from time to time, we come across officials at many levels, some quite high ones occasionally, who have succumbed to temptation, and we have to act against them zealously. And even if it's embarrassing or awkward for us, well, we have to do it, because if we didn't do it, then that's the end of the system. And you will not be able to maintain the integrity and the reputation which we have built up over so many years.
So back to the US elections and so forth. Do people in Asia, Singapore, do they have any particular party they want to have win the US elections, or you stay very neutral in this?
We have no vote, but we live with the outcome.
Okay. And today, would you expect that after the election, the US-China relationship might get better than it is today?
We hope so. Historically, in presidential election years, the US-China relationship always gets entangled in the presidential campaign. And after that, after some time, when the new administration settles in, you begin to understand what really the world is like, and things settle down. I'm not sure whether it will happen this time, because the field is quite different, and the degree of animus and, sad to say, bipartisan consensus on treating China as a threat is quite extraordinary. And I fear that it may carry on over past the election, and if it does, I think that bodes ill for the world.
Now, in the United States, people are to some extent blaming China for COVID-19, rightly or wrongly. Is that the same phenomenon in Asia? Do people blame China for COVID-19, or basically they don't blame China for that?
I don't think it's on top of people's minds. If you ask them, I'm sure they would say, well, there must have been missteps after all. They look at the Chinese. They removed the party secretary from Wuhan. They removed the party secretary from Hubei province. So they must have done so for a reason, even though they haven't quite said what the missteps were, which merited these disciplinary actions. But frankly, no government has dealt with this completely perfectly, because it's been such a rapidly moving situation, such an unknown new disease. We're discovering things as you go along. You learn by doing. And that's what's happened to all of us. Some with better results, some for the time being with not so good results. But the battle is not over and the jury is still out.
Now, in the United States, the new law in China that deals with Hong Kong is somewhat controversial. Obviously, we've imposed some sanctions and other things, and the Secretary of State's been outspoken about it. What is the general reaction in Singapore or in Asia to what's happening in Hong Kong now?
Well, we watch what's happening in Hong Kong with concern. In fact, we've been watching it with concern for some time, because Hong Kong's had a difficult time over these last several years. It's a deeply divided society. It's had demonstrations which are bitter and protracted and increasingly with a violent tinge to them. It has an obligation to pass a national security law. That means Hong Kong is supposed to pass a national security law under the basic law, which is their constitution, which they have not been able to do. And looking at the way things were trending over the last few years, it was quite clear that this could not continue indefinitely and certainly could not last for the rest of the now 27 more years of one country, two systems. So the Chinese have now decided, well, if you're not going to pass a national security law, we, the National People's Congress in Beijing, will pass it on your behalf. And they've said that it complies with one country, two systems. In Hong Kong, the reaction has been split. Some people support it, the administration supports it. A significant part of the population have different views, but it's done. And the Chinese have said, well, you shouldn't worry, this will only affect a very small number of people, and most people should find life carrying on as usual. As time passes, if that proves to be the case, then Hong Kong will settle into a new normal. We hope so. But at the same time, this move has triggered counter responses, most notably amongst Americans in America and also in Britain, because Britain was the party to the joint declaration. And I'm sure the Chinese must have calculated that and decided that they had to do this regardless. It's most unfortunate because already there's enough menu of complications between the US and China's bilateral relationship, and this only makes things worse. But from Singapore's point of view, we hope that somehow or other Hong Kong will work through its problems, and we think it's better for Hong Kong and better for the region and Singapore if Hong Kong is stable and calm and prosperous and able to play the role which it used to play, helping China to grow and to prosper as well.
So right now, there's been for the last 2 decades or so, some competition between Hong Kong and Singapore as a place for foreign companies to relocate their businesses or to invest. Do you expect that what's happening in Hong Kong now will benefit Singapore, or it's too early to know?
There may be some movement of businesses out of Hong Kong, but I've never treated this as a very serious rivalry. I mean, a certain amount of friendly competition, yes, but the Asia Pacific is a big place and there are many opportunities, and Hong Kong has its advantages being on the doorstep of China. Singapore has a different set of advantages being in the middle of Southeast Asia and with a broader footprint. So on balance, I would say I'd much prefer Hong Kong doing well than to have people looking for places to go out of Hong Kong.
So in your 16 years as Prime Minister, you've met many Chinese leaders, presidents of China. How do you compare the current president of China with others that you've met, is in terms of his abilities, in terms of his desires? How would you assess him compared to his predecessors? Much different or the same?
I don't think we make a custom of assessing one another in public, but I think, if you have met President Xi, you will know that he is a person who knows his mind and engages you, and I think has a clear idea of what he wants China to be, and is very determined to make it happen. It's a very huge country. It is not simple to govern, and I'm sure that he's more preoccupied with his domestic challenges than with the international aspect, important though the international aspects are.
Yeah. Now, in your economy, you are trying to digitally transform the Singapore economy to make it much more of a digital economy than historically maybe it's been or been anybody's been. How is that going, and what is your goals?
We are making progress. I think with the COVID-19 and the lockdown, maybe it's gone faster because people have got used to working from home with teleconferencing, with e-shopping and e-payments. Basically, we have got a lot of hardware. There's an average of 1.5 or 2 handphones per person, per adult person in Singapore. We are wired up for the internet. All the homes have fiber. Wi-Fi is pervasive and fast. But we haven't quite brought all the pieces together so that the systems work together, and in a way which deliver macro efficiency improvements and results. It's so in the government. I think it's so in the private sector too. And we're trying to derive some of these benefits by bringing the pieces together, by making enablers. For example, by having a national digital identification system so that you can use that and unlock all kinds of services. Or having a national payments infrastructure, e-payments infrastructure, so that people can build apps on top of that, and you can have a proliferation of different apps, but the same infrastructure which is shared by everybody and which is efficient and economical to use. And we are building these progressively. We also have to get the legal infrastructure right, the safeguards for privacy, for use of data, so that people have the confidence to put their data onto the internet and in a safe way. And these are things which we are working on progressively. I think it will take some time yet, but if any city is able to do that, I think we have a good chance, because we have one level of government. Our population is reasonably tech savvy, and we've already had a long track record of marching in this direction.
Now, COVID-19 had put Singapore and many countries in the world into a bit of a recession. Are you emerging from the recession this year, and how do you expect your economic growth to be for the year?
We had a very bad second quarter because of our circuit breaker with a lockdown. So it was minus 12, 13% compared to a year ago, year on year. I think for it'll rebound after the circuit breaker ended, but for the year as a whole, I'm quite sure we'll end up negative. I'm not sure, -3, -4%, maybe more. The key thing is not the number. The key thing is which parts of the economy can you preserve and operate normally, and which parts have to be triaged and transition into new activities or new business models, and which parts will take some time to come back, and you've got to keep them sort of in suspended animation until things come back to normal. And things like travel and transportation, unfortunately for the time being, are in suspended animation, and we have to try our best to keep those capabilities intact so that when things come back to normal again, once again, SIA will be flying, and once again, will be the best airline in the world.
So if the next president of the United States, whoever it might be, President Trump, reelected, or Vice President Biden, if he called you up the day after the election and said, I need some advice about how to enhance our relationships in Asia, what would be your 1 or 2 things you would tell the next president to do?
I would say 3 things. 1, stabilize your relations with China, because for the rest of Asia, we depend on stable US-China relations in order for us to have a secure, predictable environment in which we can make a living and live our lives. It's a big ask, but it's important for the US too. Secondly, I would say, please try and develop a bipartisan consensus so that there is stability and predictability in US-Asian relations. Not just do the right thing for your administration, but make a consensus so that the policy will last beyond your administration and people can plan on it and can depend on it. We had the Obama administration and they talked about the rebalancing towards Asia, and many Asian countries supported that. And we asked Obama, he says, we said, what will happen after your administration? He said, well, this is irreversible. But the Trump administration has a different take. They have raised issues of compensation and payments with the Japanese and the South Koreans. They've also talked about putting more emphasis on Asia, which is welcome, but it's a quite different mood from what Obama used to do. And we don't know what Trump's successor is going to do, or the successor's successor. So if you can establish stable, predictable policy with bipartisan consensus, I think it will be a great help to all your friends and partners who want to be able to depend on you and to rely on you without the risk that one day the big power may suddenly decide its interests lie elsewhere. Having asked those two things, I would make one third ask, which by comparison perhaps is not so huge, and that is find a way to come back to the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which America took the lead in negotiating, but the Trump administration said, no, this is no good for America. We walk away from it. But the rest of the TPP members have come together and we have followed through, and we have the free trade agreement with 11 parties not without the US. But if the US can find a way politically to come back to it and join it, then you're not only advancing US interests in the region, you're also setting a dynamic in the region towards cooperation and the right rules, which will help the region to integrate, which will build trust, which will raise standards for trade and for economic exchange between the countries. And who knows, one day the Chinese may decide they have to come and join the game and participate by the same rules. And I think that you will have had a win-win. So I only ask three things.
Okay, so in the United States, we're obsessed a bit with what's going on in North Korea. Are people in Asia as worried as we are in the United States about North Korea? Can you give us any insights into Kim Jong-un?
We don't know what Kim Jong-un is thinking. We hosted the Trump-Kim summit in Singapore. They came, we met them. I met both President Trump and Chairman Kim. But I cannot say that I have any special insight. We are worried. We do see this as something which can upend Northeast Asia. And I think in Asia, if that happens, I doubt very much that Southeast Asia will remain unscathed. But there's not something which we have a lot of leverage on.
Okay. So a final question before we take some questions that have been sent in. What do you do for relaxation? You seem to be healthy and you've been doing this for a while. You must take some time off. Do you relax by doing math problems as your former math major at Cambridge? Or what do you do? Do you work on your computer games that you like? What do you do for relaxation and stay healthy?
I exercise, I walk, I do Pilates. I take photographs. I enjoy taking pictures of people and of places in Singapore. I try to keep my home computer network running, but now I have two sons who are computer science graduates and they do it, and I'm just a bystander.
Okay, so let me ask a few questions that have been sent in. One is from Michael Anderson. He wants to know how Singapore Airlines and Singapore's casinos are coping with the COVID-19 crisis.
The casinos have reopened. I don't think they can have the same tourist flow as they used to, but they are operating. Singapore Airlines is operating, but the passenger load is way down. And we are actively trying to develop green lanes and safe travel arrangements with other countries where COVID-19 is under control so that we can restart the traffic.
Many times people have thought Singapore Airlines is the best in the world. Is it still the best in the world in your view?
Yes, of course. I'm convinced.
So here's a question from Tamil Marasu, if I pronounce it correctly. What kind of role do you think India can play amidst the current US-China tensions?
I think India has great potential to grow. Their population is younger than China's, is about the same size as China's, but they are not at the same level as China is. China today is about 16% of world GDP and 12% of world trade. India is about 1/5 of that in terms of GDP and 1/6 of that in terms of world trade. So the scale is different, but on the other hand, if the Indians can unleash their productive energies and grow the way China grew over the last 4 decades since Deng Xiaoping started reform and opening up, then there's tremendous potential for India to make a big contribution to the rest of Asia and to the rest of the world. And at the same time, to develop a constructive relationship with China. But India is a much more complicated society than China, and they have tried very hard, and I think the present Prime Minister is trying very hard too, but it takes a while to develop the momentum, and we are still hoping that they will do so.
So a question from Drake Long. What are the prospects of a code of conduct in the South China Sea being completed as scheduled by 2021?
We will try our best. I think it will take some time. We have reached the point of agreeing on a single negotiating text, meaning a text where everybody's issues are put down, not that you have settled any of the issues, and now the issues have to be negotiated. I don't think that you can set a deadline to settling the issues because they are substantive ones and it will not be easy to resolve them. But we will try our best. I think it's far better that we are talking about a code of conduct and trying to work it out rather than having face-offs at sea, at close quarters, at risk of collisions and escalations.
Question from Yao. Essentially, the Chinese tech giants are investing heavily in tech startups and other things in Southeast Asia. Do you worry that China's tech companies will become so dominant that you will be dependent on them for technology? Or are the American tech companies also very active in Southeast Asia and Singapore?
I don't think the Chinese tech companies are investing in a big scale in Southeast Asia, the way American tech companies have invested and set up plants all over Southeast Asia and the rest of the world. They are active, their products, they're pushing and marketing their products, including 5G products like Huawei. But they are part of the landscape and we do business with them. When you, in the electronics supply chain, the Chinese are a significant component of it. I think more so than the Americans. If the supply chain bifurcates, it will be painful. It may still happen, but we hope that there will be trust between the two sides and it will be possible for cooperation to continue and for you to continue to use iPhones with components made in China and for the Chinese to use Huawei phones with components made in the US. But it does require a certain degree, significant degree of trust and a willingness to want to work together rather than to have a one up and one down outcome.
So the concern expressed, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that's the way things are going right now.
The concerns expressed in the United States by the US government about Huawei, are they concerns that you share as well, or you're not as certain about that?
Well, our attitude is that when you buy a 3G or 4G or 5G system, whichever system it is, everybody is going to want to try to come into it. And there's no system which is totally 100% secure, either from the manufacturer or from other people who are interested to come in. So it's a balance of the risks and the purposes to which it is going to be put and how you can minimize the risks and operate in a way which does not lead you to conclude that you must do everything yourself.
Now, you are the...
We have just called a 5G request for proposals, and we did not exclude Huawei. As it turned out, in the main bids, the bidders did not choose Huawei, but in some of the other aspects of the 5G networks, Huawei will be figuring, and in future bids, I have no doubt that they will be participating again.
In your role as Prime Minister, I believe you're also chairman of GIC. For those who
Yes.
are not familiar with the investment world, and I should disclose my firm has had investments from GIC. We've had a close relationship, but GIC is a sovereign wealth fund, more or less. How has that been helpful to Singapore? And does GIC invest all over the world, China, United States, everywhere? And why is it a national asset for you?
Well, we decided that as our reserves grew, Dr. Goh Keng Swee decided that looking after the reserves was a full-time responsibility and needed a specific set of mindsets and skills, which cannot just live in a central bank or a Ministry of Finance. And so we set up GIC as a dedicated fund manager managing a significant part of the government's reserves overseas. So its mandate is overseas, private markets as well as public markets, many asset classes, including equities, bonds, real estate, infrastructure. And we invest around the world, emerging markets, developed economies, China, America, Europe. And they do it from a long-term perspective in order to grow our reserves and to enhance their value net of inflation. And to do so in a way which is insulated from political pressures so that they can make professional decisions and take risks and judge risks and make investments which make sound financial sense. And on that basis, I think they have performed not badly over now, I think about probably about 40 years. And in this downturn, we are very grateful for them because they have grown our assets. And so this year, when we had to put in special spending to cope with the downturn, we put in 100 billion extra Singapore dollars for our various budget packages. More than half the money came from reserves which had built up over the years. And we went to the president and got permission from the president to draw on our reserves in order to use it in this emergency.
So my final question is, if somebody is watching and they wanted to know a little bit about Singapore more than they just heard from you, you were to summarize Singapore, what do you think you would like the average person in the world to know about Singapore in a minute or two?
It's a small country which wants to make a success of itself in the world through its wits, through its hard work, through its friends all around the world, and by making itself useful to neighbors and to others who will decide, yes, it is in our interest that Singapore survives, it's in our interest that we do business with Singapore, and if Singapore does well, they too get something out of this, and therefore we are able to make a living, and there's a future and a bright prospect for every generation of Singaporean.